Hey guys, tonight we wake up in the Roman Empire and things are already not ideal. You open your eyes and instantly notice three things. Your back hurts, something's crawling near your foot, and it smells like damp goat. So before you get really comfortable and fall asleep, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And hey, comment and let me know where you're watching from and what time is it where you are. I find it super interesting to see who's joining you from all over the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on the fan for that gentle hum, and let's go on tonight's journey together. Welcome to your new life in an ancient Roman insula, a kind of tenement apartment building where privacy is rare, ceilings leak, and you've probably got a family of mice for roommates. Congratulations! You're officially poor in the greatest empire the world has ever seen. The first thing you see is the ceiling. Well, the part of it that hasn't flaked off. Sunlight leaks through a cracked shutter, casting a line of dusty gold across the room. It's morning, you think. There's no alarm clock, no smartphone. Just the noisy chorus of early market vendors shouting and clanging pots in the street 5 floors below. You groan, stretch, and hit your head on the wooden beam above you. Yep, still real. You roll off the straw mattress, no blankets. Just a linen sheet, probably shared. The bed creaks. Loudly. The whole room is about the size of a modern closet. If you're lucky, you've got one oil lamp, one clay jug of water, a chamber pot you absolutely don't want to look inside, and possibly a cousin or two sleeping next to you. You can't tell if that scraping noise is a rat or your neighbor's broom above. And you are parched. Unfortunately, the jug on the floor contains something between murky rainwater and Legionnaire's foot bath. You sniff it. Yep. Just going to pretend that's herbs. You shuffle to your clothes, your only clothes, by the way. A tunic. It's coarse wool, slightly itchy, and smells faintly of vinegar and onions. You tie it with a rope. No socks, no shoes, unless you manage to snag a pair of worn sandals from a dying uncle. You're already sweating, and the day hasn't even begun. You push open the crooked door to your unit, and you're immediately hit by a wall of smells. Someone's cooking fish. Someone else is relieving themselves, and someone somewhere is burning incense like it owes money. You dodge around a sleepy kid clutching a stale crust and a chicken who definitely isn't anyone's pet, and you begin your descent down the insula's wooden staircase. The stairs are steep, very steep, and wobbly. These buildings were thrown up quickly to house Rome's swelling population, and it shows. Historians still argue whether the average lifespan of an insula was 10 years or just long enough for the landlord to disappear with your last denarius. Some of these things were 8 stories tall, creaking like they were built by a drunken centurion on his day off. Fire? Common? Collapses? Even more so. You pass neighbors along the way. A sleepy baker covered in flour dust, an old woman muttering to her gods, a group of kids arguing over who gets the least moldy bread heel. No one looks particularly happy to be awake. As you reach the bottom floor, you spot a bucket half filled with cloudy water. Someone's attempt at a bath. You consider dunking your head, but decide to live with the grease. After all, you've got bigger problems. Outside is chaos. The moment you open the door, you're greeted by the sensory tsunami that is a Roman morning. Cobblestones slick with muck, hooves clattering, angry goats, vendors shouting over one another with the desperation of men who know no one wants another basket of spoiled figs. You take a breath. It smells like sweat, fish brine, and last night's public urination. Lovely. Oh, and did we mention you don't really know what day it is? That's because the Roman calendar is a mess. Between religious holidays, feast days, market days, and the random political days the Senate keeps inventing, time is a fluid concept. You could be late for work, or early, or accidentally celebrating Saturnalia in July. But there's no time to figure that out because you've got to start your day, and it's not going to wait. Your stomach growls. You're hungry. Of course you are. You had half a boiled turnip and a cup of vinegar water for dinner, and that was considered a treat. Your belly feels like a deflated wineskin. There's a stall around the corner run by a guy with 2 teeth and a very convincing beard. He offers you something that looks like bread but has the consistency of sandstone. You gnaw on it anyway. It's your only meal until maybe dinner, if you're lucky, and if your boss isn't in a mood, which he is, always. A couple of upper-class types stroll past. Fine togas, smug expressions, a slave or two in tow. They don't see you. You don't exist in their world. You're just part of the scenery. A background character in their marble drama. They joke about a Senate hearing, laugh about a gladiator match, and disappear into the crowd like oily ghosts. You think back to your life in the 21st century. Air conditioning, toothpaste, private bathrooms, and it almost feels like a dream. Here, in this tangled mess of humanity and humidity, you're just one more grain of sand on the Empire's sandal. A cart barrels past and you jump back just in time to avoid a very permanent flattening. The driver doesn't even glance your way. Behind him, 2 boys chase a dog with a stick, screaming like it's the best morning of their lives. Maybe it is. You sigh. This is just the beginning. And yet, for all its grime, its chaos, its constant danger of stepping in something unspeakable, Rome hums with life. You can't help but marvel at how alive it all is. You hear 5 different languages just walking 1 block. You smell 10 different kinds of food and 8 different types of garbage. There's a strange beauty in the madness, but you wouldn't survive a day here? Not yet, anyway. You finally locate the nearest latrine. And when we say locate, we mean you follow the unmistakable scent of human despair and rotting cabbage down a side alley, around a corner, and through a low archway into what can only be described as a public bathroom designed by someone who's never respected the concept of privacy. Here it is, Rome's finest communal toilet. Picture this, a long stone bench with keyhole-shaped holes cut into it, side by side with no partitions. You just sit next to whoever else is in there. Could be a baker, could be a senator, could be a drunk man yelling about Jupiter's toenails. There's no discrimination. Everyone poops shoulder to shoulder in Rome. Now, you may be wondering, where's the toilet paper? Oh, sweet summer child. You see that wooden stick resting in the bucket of murky water near your foot? That's a tersorium, a communal sponge on a stick. That's right, communal. You don't get your own. It's dipped, wiped, rinsed, and reused. The sponge is shared between everyone. You eye it with the cautious dread of a person who knows they're out of options. You hover awkwardly trying to time your entry so you're not sitting next to the guy who just had a very spicy lunch. Meanwhile, across the bench, a mother is coaching her toddler through his first public squat, and a man is arguing with himself about tax grain quotas. You're getting an intimate cross-section of Roman life, quite literally. Oh, and don't drop anything. The sewer system below, as sophisticated as it was for its time, is not a place from which you'll retrieve your coin, your dignity, or your sandal. Trust us. Now, we've got to give Rome some credit. The Cloaca Maxima, their massive sewer system, was a feat of engineering, but it didn't mean your insula had indoor plumbing. Most buildings didn't. Waste got dumped in chamber pots and flung into the street with a quick cave canium warning. That's Latin for watch out, which honestly should be on a plaque over every Roman window. You do your business, slowly, reluctantly, and attempt the tersorium maneuver. The less said about that, the better. Let's just say it gives new meaning to getting to know the locals. You make your way back into the light of day, blinking like a cave creature. A flock of geese scatter as a street performer juggles ceramic plates with the wild-eyed confidence of someone who clearly failed out of gladiator school. You sidestep a child chasing a runaway apple and another merchant hawking genuine Carthaginian relics that were definitely made last week in someone's basement. Your stomach reminds you that you've yet to eat anything not made of stone or fear today. So you return to that small stall tucked between 2 shrines to forgotten gods. The stall owner, let's call him Gaius, mostly because he looks like every mosaic of generic Roman guy in Nutcracker 4, offers you a piece of panis, which is Roman bread. It's dry, it's crusty, it's more weapon than food, but it fills the gap. If you're feeling wild, you might get a smear of garum on it, a fermented fish sauce that smells like every bad decision combined. It was Rome's favorite condiment, used on everything from vegetables to, somehow, dessert. You take a bite. It's like licking Poseidon's armpit. But weirdly, not terrible? Next to Gaius' stall, a woman is selling boiled chickpeas. She's shouting the same thing over and over. Callida! Callida! Hot, hot! You toss her a tiny bronze coin and scoop a few into your palm. They're mushy, steamy, and surprisingly your first warm food of the day. She smiles at you with 5 teeth and the pride of a Michelin star chef. You nod back, mouth full. Meanwhile, a donkey tries to steal your chickpeas. You fend him off with the bread. He looks offended. The streets are getting busier. This is the Rome of 1 million people. Bustling, chaotic, and unsanitary in a way that makes your high school gym locker room seem like a luxury spa. Everywhere you turn, there's something happening. Men yelling about politics, women haggling over tunics, a man with a monkey doing tricks while stealing wallets. You step aside as a group of toga-clad officials passes, flanked by bodyguards and trailed by scribes, scribbling as fast as their wax tablets allow. You recognize one of them. He gave a long speech in the forum yesterday about public morality while very publicly accepting bribes. Politics hasn't changed much. You catch a whiff of the Tiber River. It smells thick, like someone tried to turn soup into perfume. Historians still argue whether the river's stench was considered a normal part of city life or a constant civic embarrassment. You're leaning toward the latter. Further down the alley, someone's playing a panpipe badly. You hear a cat screech. A child giggles. A shopkeeper drops a jar of olive oil that explodes like a greasy thunderclap. Shards fly. Everyone yells. Then they move on. Just another Tuesday. You pass a shrine to Mercury, god of travelers and thieves. Fitting, really. You toss in a coin and make a wish. Clean water and 5 uninterrupted minutes of silence. Mercury doesn't answer. Rude. Suddenly you hear bells clanging. The fire brigade, such as it is, barrels past you. These aren't firefighters in uniform. They're more like a glorified gang of bucket-wielding toughs hired by rich homeowners to put out fires only if paid first. Your insula is probably at risk. Again. And then there's the pickpocket. Oh yeah. You only notice because your coin pouch is suddenly lighter. You spin around, catch a glimpse of a kid vanishing into the crowd. Gone. You sigh. At least he didn't take the bread. So, to recap, you've used a sponge someone else used. You've eaten fermented fish paste. A donkey tried to mug you. And your wallet's gone. Still think you could last a day here? At this point, you'd kill for a proper breakfast. You know, the kind with eggs, toast, maybe even a coffee. But remember, you're in ancient Rome now, and the concept of breakfast is more of a light suggestion than a proper meal. The Romans called it ientaculum, which sounds fancy until you realize it usually consisted of stale bread, perhaps dipped in watered-down wine, and if you were high class, maybe a few dates or a smear of cheese that definitely turned during the night. But you're not high class. You're living in the 5th floor sauna of a crumbling insula. So today's breakfast? Half a loaf of yesterday's bread, dry as a senator's sense of humor. You chew slowly, very slowly. This isn't just food, it's jaw exercise. You pass a man selling honeyed nuts and wish you could afford even one. The smell alone is divine. Sweet, roasted, slightly burnt. A rich boy tosses a few to his pet monkey, who eats with smug satisfaction. You stare. The monkey stares back. You've never felt more judged. As you trudge through the streets, your stomach protesting every step, you pass a man with a tiny grill roasting botulus, Roman blood sausage. He flips one toward you. You hesitate. It's warm, salty, kind of squishy, but honestly, after the bread, it's gourmet. You nod your thanks and toss him your last coin. Worth it. You sit on a cracked stone bench, chewing contemplatively. A group of young men in togas pass by, laughing about politics and poetry like they own the city, which they probably do. One of them is quoting Virgil loudly. Another is complaining that his Bolney bathhouse wasn't hot enough yesterday. First world problems, circa 1st century. A woman walks past balancing a tray of figs on her head. You swear you've never seen someone move with such grace across such chaos. She's humming, oblivious to the donkey braying, the kid crying, and the dog peeing on a shrine to Mars. You watch a baker haul a tray of fresh loaves from a sidewalk oven. The smell hits you like a warm embrace. Panis quadratus, the Roman bread shaped in wedges like a pie, is steaming hot. You consider stealing one. Just for a second. But then the baker turns, glaring like he's dealt with people like you before. You back off. The dog gets one. Figures. Across the square, a group of laborers is shoving down their meager morning meal. Mostly lentils and barley mash. They're loud, laughing, sharing bites. You realize something weird? They seem happy. Maybe it's the camaraderie. Or maybe it's just easier to be cheerful when your expectations are this low. One man offers you a bite of something wrapped in fig leaves. You take it without asking what it is. You chew. It's fine. Mushy, slightly vinegary. Could be fish. Could be pickled pigeon. You don't care. It's warm, and that's enough. In the distance, you hear a town crier shout out the news. His voice echoes down the alleyways. Proclamations about new laws, announcements from the emperor, maybe even a warning about the price of grain rising again. You try to listen, but he's using a lot of words like addictum and praetor, and something about a tax on bricks. You nod politely, pretending to understand. Your attention drifts to a tiny street altar. Just a niche in a wall with a soot-covered statue of Vesta, goddess of the hearth. Someone's left an offering, a half-eaten pear and a pinch of salt. You toss a few crumbs from your breakfast. Can't hurt. You start walking again, following the rising chatter toward the markets. The Macellum, Rome's bustling food marketplace, is already a swirling storm of smells, sights, and shouting. You're immediately pulled into the fray by a butcher yelling about his fresh goat meat. You side-eye the meat. It's not fresh. It has more flies than a battlefield. Next to him, a fishmonger slaps a trout against the table like it owes him money. You're pretty sure it blinked and died again. Then there's the cheese seller whose wheel of pecorino is cracking in the sun. He winks at you. You pretend not to see. You edge away to a quieter corner where an old woman is selling pulse, a gruel made from emmer wheat. It's the Roman peasant's staple, thick, grayish, and aggressively bland. She spoons a glob into a clay bowl and hands it to you. You dig in. It's hot. It tastes like boiled apathy, but it's filling. Add garum, she says, of course. Fish sauce again. You hesitate, then drizzle a bit on. Okay, slightly better, and now it tastes like salted boiled apathy. You sit under the shade of a crumbling column and let the world pass by. The sun's rising higher, and with it comes the smell of humanity in full bloom. Sweat, perfume, fish, burning olive oil. Your stomach is full now, sort of. Your body? Already tired. You hear two old men arguing in Greek. One is claiming the Parthians are about to invade. The other says it's the Germans. Historians still argue whether the Romans truly understood the extent of their northern borders. One of them declares, dramatically, probably quoting Pliny, or maybe just making it up. You consider this as you sip the last of your watered-down wine. You're not sure if it helped or made you thirstier. A bee lands on your cup. You stare at it. it stares back. You both seem to agree. This morning has been a lot. You lean your head back against the stone and sigh. The day has barely begun, and already you've battled bread, conquered the communal toilet, and shared your breakfast with 2 strangers and a donkey. So, how's that easy ancient life fantasy going? Yeah, that's what we thought. You dust off your tunic and rise from the column's shade, feeling the kind of full-body fatigue that normally doesn't hit until mid-afternoon. But you've still got a long day ahead, because now it's time for work. Or, as it's known here in the Roman Empire, the daily grind, but with more dirt, danger, and a generous lack of safety regulations. Let's be honest. You're not a patrician, you're not in politics, and you definitely weren't born into a senatorial family with a country villa and a private bathhouse. You're a plebeian, a working-class nobody with calluses on your hands and permanent dust in your sandals. Today, you're reporting to your usual gig down by the riverfront, loading bricks. Not glamorous, but it's honest work. Or at least would be if your foreman Cassius didn't spend half his morning napping and the other half shouting. You arrive at the site to find a pile of bricks roughly the size of a small temple. Your job? Move them from that pile to a slightly different pile across the street. Progress, Roman style. Cassius spots you. He's shirtless, sweating, and wielding a stick he only uses to point, threaten, or stir wine. You're late, he growls, even though you're not. No excuses today. You nod, grab a brick, and begin your day's choreography. Lift, walk, drop, repeat. After about 20 repetitions, your arms feel like wet noodles. After 50, you seriously start considering time travel. Not to escape, just to invent ibuprofen. The sun's climbing fast, and so is the smell. The river nearby reeks of dumped waste and fish guts. Your sweat starts to sting your eyes. You squint, adjust your grip, and keep moving. A fellow worker beside you, Flavius, grins through grime-caked teeth. Only 6 more hours, he says cheerfully. 6 more hours. You pass the time with idle chatter. Flavius tells a wild story about a goat that somehow got elected as magistrate in a village up north. You laugh. It's ridiculous. Except in Rome? Not that impossible. A few paces away, a group of women are spinning wool, chatting softly, their hands moving faster than your legs ever will. One of them catches your eye and smirks. You smile back, then nearly drop a brick on your foot. Smooth. Nearby, a scribbler, probably a failed poet, scratches graffiti into the wall between loads. It says, Lucilla est pulcherrima. You don't know Lucilla, but you're glad someone out there is still writing love notes during backbreaking labor. Later, someone adds, et odorat sicut capra, and smells like a goat. Ah, Roman romance. About an hour in, a man drops a brick on his own toe and screams in Latin, so fluently it impresses even the gods. A medicus is called. He shows up with a jar of salve, a handful of herbs, and the solemn expression of a man who has no idea what he's doing. Roman medicine isn't exactly a shining achievement. You once heard about a woman who was prescribed crushed emeralds for indigestion. Historians still argue whether that was real treatment or just a rich person's version of pretending to be busy. Your job gets interrupted briefly when a passing official demands everyone bow while he parades through with 2 slaves fanning him, and another carrying a scroll he never reads. You squint at him. His sandals are too clean to trust. Eventually, Cassius allows a short break. You slump down next to Flavius and dig into the lunch you brought. Dried lentils and a hunk of that same bread from breakfast. A bee lands on it. You let it have a nibble. It's earned it. Think we'll get paid today? Flavius asks. You both laugh. That's adorable. Payment, if it comes at all, is in a copper coin that's barely worth its weight. Enough for a cup of bad wine and maybe half a fig. If you're lucky. If not, Cassius will say the funds are delayed by the Senate, and everyone just shrugs and continues breaking their backs. An ox cart rumbles past, nearly toppling as it hits a pothole large enough to swallow a small child. A group of children actually cheer, probably hoping it does. You don't blame them. Entertainment is hard to come by when your entire life is a labor shift. Later in the afternoon, a sudden yell erupts nearby. Two workers are fighting, something about someone stealing someone else's tunic string. You try not to get involved, but everyone ends up watching like it's the Colosseum's opening act. Cassius eventually ends it by chucking a broken amphora at them. Effective, if not OSHA approved. You wipe your brow with a scrap of linen. Your hands are raw, your knees ache, your sandals are disintegrating, and yet you push on. Because in Rome, labor isn't just survival, it's the thing that keeps the machine grinding. You don't work, you don't eat. Simple math. But sometimes you wonder, where does all this work go? The buildings rise. The aqueducts stretch. The empire expands. But does anyone remember the brick hauler? The wool spinner? The lentil eater with a bee friend? There's no statue for you. No inscription. No praise in the forum. Just sweat and stone and another hour of this. Still, there's something strangely meditative about the rhythm. Lift, walk, drop, repeat. It's a kind of terrible harmony. And as the sun starts sinking toward the horizon, casting the streets in golden dust, you realize something. You survived another Roman workday. Sort of. As you drag your aching limbs away from the work site, muscles twitching and sweat dripping into your eyes, you realize something unpleasant. You're still not done. Because navigating the streets of Rome in the late afternoon, that's a full contact sport. You step onto the via, the main road, and are immediately swallowed by a human soup. Everyone, and we mean everyone, is out. Shoppers, pickpockets, housewives, drunk poets, runaway slaves, grumpy donkeys, even a group of street musicians banging on old bronze pans. The air smells like crushed herbs, donkey droppings, perfume, and despair. You sidestep a puddle only to nearly trip over a mangled sandal. A cart screeches past, wheels wobbling, driven by a man yelling insults in a dialect that hasn't been spoken since the Republic. You clutch your tunic and try not to look like a prime target for theft, extortion, or overly enthusiastic street performers. One of them, a young man in a leopard print cloak juggling eggs, calls out, "Spare a coin for Jupiter's most talented son?" You raise an eyebrow. He juggles, drops one, and it splats against your foot. He bows. You walk away. The insulae tower around you, rickety, 8-story tall fire hazards, leaning like drunken soldiers after a Saturnalia feast. Historians still argue whether these buildings were feats of engineering or just elaborate death traps. From a safety standpoint, it's a solid no. A woman yells out her window, something about her neighbor's goat again. Below, a child is drawing in the dust with a stick, totally ignoring the fact that a passing dog is relieving itself 3 inches away. Life in Rome doesn't pause for decorum. You pass a few food stalls again, now emitting stronger smells as the heat of the day has done. Things. To the produce. The fish vendor is still shouting, though his mackerel now have a distinct greenish tint. He shrugs at you. Still good. Spoiler, it's not. Suddenly you stumble. Your foot sinks into something squishy. You don't look down, you never look down. It's the first rule of Roman pedestrianism. Always look forward, never question the squish. You veer into a narrow alley hoping for a shortcut. Big mistake. Here, the buildings lean even closer. It's damp. Cold. The kind of place you instinctively know is excellent for being mugged, haunted, or both. A rat darts by. You're not sure if it was carrying a coin or a message. Either way, it seemed busy. At the end of the alley, you find yourself at a communal water fountain. A few women are filling jugs, chatting loudly about someone named Sabina, who may or may not be sleeping with the tanner. You smile politely. One of them eyes your filthy tunic and offers a splash of water. It's warm, slightly gritty, but it's a kindness. And kindness is rare here. You keep walking, your sandals making wet slaps against the stones. You pass by a temple with granite columns glowing in the late light. A priest is reciting hymns to Mars while carefully sidestepping a dog doing its business on the steps. Sacred and profane side by side. In the next street, a dice game is in full swing. Men crouch over their bones, shouting, slamming hands down as money changes hands faster than you can blink. You consider joining, but the last guy who lost now has a nose shaped like a Ceres crescent loaf. You move on. You hear a familiar voice. It's Marcus, a friend of a friend, probably drunk, reciting poetry to a cluster of women who look very much like they regret stopping. Oh, Livia, your eyes are like olive pits. Dark, small, and sometimes bitter. Wow, smooth. Beyond the taverns and temples, a man's preaching loudly in the forum. Something about reform, justice, and why senators shouldn't be allowed to own more than 10 slaves. People are booing. You suspect he won't be around long. You pause for a moment in the middle of a square. All around you, life. Messy, chaotic, unfiltered life. It's loud and it smells like everything all at once. And yet, there's beauty in it. The clatter of sandals, the whinny of horses, the constant hum of conversation in Latin, Greek, and some third thing you don't recognize. Then comes the breeze. A rare one. Cool, carrying a faint scent of laurel and cooking pork. You exhale. Just for a second, Rome feels manageable. And then someone yells. You turn. A goat has escaped again. It's charging straight toward you, horned, determined, and very clearly done with everyone's nonsense. You jump, you dodge, you slip, and land in a basket of bruised figs. Someone claps. A child laughs. The goat smirks. You brush yourself off. A toothless old man nearby says, "Better than getting kicked by a mule." Thanks, sir. Very helpful. You limp away, fig juice sticky on your tunic, wondering what else the streets of Rome have planned for you. You pass another insula, and from the window, someone dumps a chamber pot. You flinch just in time. It splashes on the road. You give the guy a look. He shrugs. Should have shouted louder. Finally, you reach your neighborhood again. It's not much, but it's familiar. The stones are uneven, the walls are cracked, but you recognize the dog with the limp in the corner where someone scratched a crude drawing of a senator being eaten by lions. Art in its purest form. You climb the steps to your insula, one creaking board at a time, muscles on fire. Your room waits above like a dusty reward. Before you can rest, you hear a crash behind you. Of course. The guy upstairs just knocked over his brazier again. Better hope there's still a bucket of water in the stairwell. By the time you reach the bathhouse, you smell like desperation and 4 types of sweat. Your arms are sore, your knees sound like a broken lyre, and there's fig pulp in your hair. So when you see the telltale curls of steam drifting from the Thermae, Rome's public baths, you could cry. And maybe you will, right after the oil scraping. The bathhouse is one of Rome's few luxuries open to all classes. That's right. Even if you live in a fire-prone shoebox, you can bathe like an emperor. Sort of. You pay a tiny fee to the Osterius, the grumpy doorman who looks like he hasn't bathed since Nero's last poetry recital. He grunts, waves you in, and you're immediately enveloped by a wave of heat, humidity, and naked people. So many naked people. First stop, the Apoditerium, the changing room. There are no lockers, no privacy. Just a few wooden benches and a suspiciously sticky floor. You disrobe. Awkwardly, quickly, and while guarding your coin pouch like it's the last sesterce on earth. Theft in bathhouses is common. There's even graffiti warning you not to trust anyone named Tertius. You believe it. Now nude, uncomfortable, and somehow already sweatier, you proceed into the tepidarium, a warm, steamy chamber where people lie around like sleepy seals on a beach. The heat loosens your limbs, and for a moment, you almost relax, until someone coughs directly onto your shoulder. You scoot away, quietly. Then it's into the caldarium, the hot room. And we mean hot. It hits you like opening an oven full of boiling soup. The air is thick, the walls drip with condensation, and every surface is one accidental slip away from a cracked tailbone. You sit on a bench and try not to think about how many butts have touched it before yours. A man next to you is loudly ranting about grain taxes. Another is doing push-ups because apparently this is his gym. A third is snoring. You stare into the rising steam and try to pretend you're on a beach. A beach where everyone is shouting and nobody wears clothes. A ball kneader or bath attendant appears, shirtless, oiled, and carrying a bucket of hot water. He gestures. It's time. You lie face down on a marble slab, and he begins the ancient ritual known as strigilatio. No soap here, my friend. Instead, he pours oil over your skin. Thick, slick olive oil, and then scrapes it off with a curved metal tool called a strigil. Scrape. 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 It's oddly satisfying, until he finds that sunburn you didn't know you had. You yelp. He grunts and keeps going. Apparently, complaints are part of the process. You are now glistening like a roast goose, smelling vaguely like a salad, and smooth in a way that feels unnatural. He pats your back, nods, and moves on to his next victim. You rinse off in a lukewarm splash pool, more ceremonial than cleansing, and then shuffle into the frigidarium, the cold room. The temperature drop is brutal. Your body, freshly boiled and oiled, rebels instantly. You gasp as you dip a foot in, then the other, and finally, with the hesitation of a man contemplating his regrets, you go under. The cold shocks your system like a slap from Neptune himself. You emerge sputtering. The old man across the pool cackles. Good for the joints, he croaks. You're not convinced. But as you sit at the edge, goosebumps rising and oil residue gently sliding off into the water, you feel clean. Sort of. You're still you, but slightly less filthy. It's the Roman version of a spa day, minus robes, tea, or cucumbers on your eyes. You dry off with a scrap of cloth that smells like it's never truly been dry, redress in your still sweaty tunic, and step back out into the street. Immediately, the dust, the stink, and the flies greet you like old friends. The bathhouse had one job. It tried. Now, if you were rich, really rich, you'd have your own private bath suite in your domus with clean towels, perfumed oils, and a slave trained in back massages and gossip. But you're not. You're a pleb, and you've just shared a tub with 20 strangers, 3 wandering dogs, and a child who definitely peed in the pool. Still, there's a strange satisfaction in knowing that you've participated in one of Rome's great equalizers. The bathhouse is where senators rub elbows with shopkeepers, where gladiators soak next to philosophers, and where you, sticky, sore, and slightly shinier, have survived yet another Roman rite of passage. As you walk away feeling lighter, cooler, and just a smidge pruny, you hear a familiar voice behind you. Back again tomorrow? It's the bath attendant, grinning. You nod vaguely. Will you return? Probably. The oil scrape is addictive. You pass a boy selling perfume, tiny glass bottles filled with crushed flowers, cinnamon, and what he claims is authentic Egyptian essence. You sniff one. It smells like burnt toast. He winks. Limited edition. You decline politely. Back on the main street, twilight is descending. The sky glows peach and gold above the tiled rooftops. Smoke curls from cook fires. Laughter rises from taverns. Somewhere, a lyre plucks out a slow, sweet tune. You take a deep breath, clean air just for a moment, and savor it. Then someone spills a chamber pot nearby and it's back to reality. Ah, Rome. You wander through the heart of Rome, belly rumbling again, and your hair still holding a faint smell of hot olives. But for now, you make your way to the city's true epicenter. Not the palaces, not the temples, not even the bathhouses. Number this right here is the real Roman stage, the Forum. Welcome to the Forum Romanum, a chaotic sprawl of shouting merchants, scheming politicians, gossipy slaves, and that one guy loudly selling owl-shaped bread for reasons known only to him and possibly Minerva. The Forum isn't just a marketplace. It's Rome's Twitter, courthouse, newspaper, therapy session, and gladiator gossip column all rolled into one cobbled plaza. And you've barely stepped into it before being immediately assaulted by a smell cocktail of incense, goat droppings, and someone roasting nuts with zero regard for smoke control. You duck beneath a marble arch, one of those grand triumphal kinds that screams, "Yes, I conquered something," and enter the fray. To your left, a crowd gathers around a bickering group of senators. They're waving scrolls, gesturing wildly, and throwing Latin insults like "Bellua stulta," dumb beast. You eavesdrop just long enough to learn that someone's cousin bribed someone else's uncle to avoid a property tax. Scandalous. But also Tuesday. To your right, a woman is preaching loudly about the goddess Cybele and shaking a rattle made of bones. A child tugs on your tunic and offers to sell you a lucky coin. It's clearly made of tin. You give him a crust of bread instead, and he vanishes like smoke. The Forum's centerpiece, a white marble platform called the Rostra, looms ahead. This is where speeches happen. Political ones, angry ones, drunk ones. Sometimes all three at once. Right now, a man in a soot-streaked toga is standing on it, shouting about corrupt aqueduct inspectors and how the Empire is too obsessed with gladiators. No one's really listening except for an old lady knitting and a goat chewing on his sandal. You stay to watch. It's free entertainment, and the goat seems invested. Then you hear it. A whip crack of a voice behind you. 2 slaves for the price of 1. Strong backs, mild temperaments, slight limp on the tall one. You turn. A slave auction is in full swing. It's quieting, the way a Roman crowd does when it's about to judge something. 2 frightened boys stand on a platform while bids are called out. Coins clink, hands raise, voices sharpen. You feel your stomach knot. This is everyday life here. Human beings bought and sold like amphorae of wine. You see a woman near you shake her head and mutter, "We were better under Augustus." You're not sure she's right, but you nod anyway. Then comes a familiar face. Your friend Flavius, still covered in dust from the brick site. He's leaning against a column and chewing on a fig. "Form's lively today," he says. You grunt in agreement, still watching the crowd shift and boil like a human stew. You both sit on the edge of a dry fountain, and he starts rattling off the day's gossip like a local podcast. That senator's wife ran off with a gladiator. Some rich guy imported parrots that only insult you. Oh, and the baker's dog had puppies. 3-legged, but adorable. This is Rome. Empires rise and fall, but the street-level drama? Eternal. Suddenly, horns blare from the eastern road. A small procession enters. Standard bearers, guards in polished armor, and a chariot rolling over flower petals thrown by children. "Another returning governor," Flavius mutters. "Back from Gaul, probably. Full of himself." The man in the chariot waves like a bored actor. His toga is bleached so white it practically glows. You can't tell if he's important or just rich. In Rome, the line is blurry. He shouts something about a feast tonight in his honor, then disappears down a gated alley. Behind you, an old philosopher is holding court on a broken column. He's lecturing about stoicism and how pain is an illusion. You raise an eyebrow. His sandals don't match. A boy asks him why thunder happens, and the philosopher replies, "Because the gods are bowling." Enlightening. You head toward the law courts next. Massive basilicas where trials, hearings, and public accusations unfold like theater. You peek into one. A man is weeping, claiming his neighbor cursed his chickens. The magistrate looks unimpressed. "Did the chickens explode?" he asks. The man sobs harder. You step out. Over by the Temple of Saturn, a small crowd is gathered for a street performance. A woman in a ragged cloak is juggling knives while singing a bawdy song about Emperor Claudius's limp. You watch until she drops one. Everyone claps anyway. The ground vibrates a little as a cart rolls past, pulled by oxen and loaded with amphori. One topples, cracks, and spills its contents, a sticky brown stream of garum. The smell hits you like a salted slap to the nostrils. You and Flavius both gag and back away. Someone behind you mutters, "At least it wasn't sewage this time." A man in a hood passes by selling scrolls of prophecies approved by Apollo. You buy one on a whim. It says, "Beware of goats and politics." Fair. Evening begins to settle over the forum, but the volume doesn't drop. Rome doesn't know how to whisper. Children dash between columns. Lovers argue softly in shadowed corners. A centurion chases a pickpocket with the slow frustration of someone who knows he won't catch him. You lean against a marble column and let it all wash over you. The voices, the dust, the flickering torchlight. Rome is loud. Rome is filthy. Rome is unfair and overwhelming and absolutely bursting with life. And as you stand there, back aching, fingers still smelling faintly of oil and fig juice, you realize this might be the most alive you've ever felt. Of course, the moment you feel vaguely optimistic about Roman life, you twist your ankle. One moment you're stepping off the forum's polished paving stones with the grace of someone pretending they belong here, and the next your foot finds the single loose slab in a 10-square-mile radius. There's a sharp jolt, a pop, and then a truly unflattering sound escapes your mouth, somewhere between a squeal and a war cry. You try to play it cool. You fail, miserably. Flavius winces beside you. That sounded crunchy. You hobble to the nearest stone bench, gripping your leg like a tragic figure from a Greek vase. Your ankle is swelling already, which is bad, because medical care in Rome isn't exactly what you call comforting. Still, you have to try something, so you limp your way to the nearest medicus. You find him in a cramped shop squeezed between a fishmonger and a shrine to the household gods. His sign says, "Cures for all ailments. No goats, no refunds." Promising. Inside, it smells of boiled herbs and panic. The medicus himself is a wiry man with more beard than face, wearing a stained tunic and an expression that says, "I once saw a liver, and now I think I'm a doctor." He barely looks up as you explain your injury. Twisted ankle? No problem, he mutters, reaching for a jar of something that looks like spoiled honey. This salve was blessed by a priest of Asclepius and has crushed mouse bones. Very effective. You blink. Mouse bones? He shrugs. Some say snake scales are better, but I'm out. He smears the concoction on your ankle, which immediately begins to sting. You clench your jaw. He wraps it in a strip of linen that may or may not have been reused from a different patient. Then he hands you a small charm made of twine and chicken feathers. For swelling, he says. Right, let's be real. Roman medicine was a weird mix of guesswork, superstition, and herbs someone found under a statue. They knew a few things, how to suture a wound, set a bone, or cauterize a gash with heated metal, but most treatment was closer to magic than science. You limp out smelling like mice and regret and shuffle into the street. Every step sends sparks up your leg, but you grit your teeth. Pain is just another Roman tradition. Back home, you might have popped some ibuprofen, elevated your leg, and binged a show in bed. Here, you're expected to walk it off, maybe soak it in wine, and just suffer. And suffer you do. You pause by a fountain to sit, ankle throbbing, and watch a man selling miracle potions from a cart. He claims his concoction will fix everything from coughs to infertility to ungrateful sons-in-law. You're tempted until you see a man drink it, immediately go pale, and stagger away muttering something about frogs. Meanwhile, a traveling healer near the Temple of Apollo is advertising a more natural remedy: crushed beetles and ground-up wolf tooth mixed with vinegar. "Only 3 denarii," he cries. "Guaranteed results or a mildly sincere apology." Historians still argue whether these fringe healers were con men or just overly enthusiastic amateurs. Either way, you're not drinking Beetlejuice today. You press on, limping past a woman who offers to burn laurel leaves in your name. An offering to Minerva for your healing, she says sweetly. You offer a smile but keep your coin. You've had enough miracles for one afternoon. In the next alley, you pass a wall of graffiti, messages scratched into the stone like ancient Twitter posts. Secundus was here and still owes me wine. The gods favor those who pay their debts. I broke my foot here. Watch your step. Thanks for the warning, ancient yelp. You reach a quieter part of the city near the gardens of Sallust. It's peaceful. Trees rustling, birds chirping, fountains bubbling gently. You sink onto a stone bench and let your ankle rest. Around you, a few upper-class folks stroll through, their conversations floating like perfume. One of them is discussing a recent bout of melancholia. His solution? Leeches and a poetry recital. Another boasts of a private physician who imported Egyptian honey to rebalance his internal heat. You raise an eyebrow. Your internal heat feels just fine, thanks. Still, you can't help but marvel at how the Romans viewed the body. Not as a machine to fix, but a battlefield between the elements. Hot and cold, dry and wet. Get too emotional? That's your humor's out of whack. Ate too many figs? Prepare for a bloodletting. You hobble back toward the forum, a bit slower now, using a stick you borrowed from a fence as a makeshift cane. The sky is turning lavender, the air cooling just enough to soothe the fire in your ankle. A passing priest blesses you with a flick of water. You don't know which god it's for, but you nod anyway. Can't hurt. You pass a group of children playing a dice game with small animal knuckles. One of them sees your limp and says, "You need a goat bladder poultice." You blink. "My uncle swears by it," he adds proudly. You promise to look into it. As twilight deepens, so does your awareness of your body. The limp, the ache, the hunger, the tiredness in your bones. Life in Rome doesn't wait for your recovery. There are no sick days, no doctor's notes. Just limp faster, work harder, or get replaced. Back at your insula, you sit by the doorway, ankle elevated on a brick, and watch the city carry on. Someone is yelling about missing laundry. Someone else is trying to light a fire using a single coal and a lot of swearing. And in the distance, a familiar sound. Someone has once again fallen into the bathhouse fountain. You chuckle quietly, despite the pain. Rome doesn't stop, but neither do you. Morning creeps in again. You wake to the chorus of hawkers hammering, and some man nearby enthusiastically vomiting. Probably last night's garum and goat stew catching up to him. You sit up slowly, testing your ankle. Still swollen, still angry, but manageable. The sunlight spills through the shutters in golden streaks, slicing across the dust in the air. Another day in the Roman Empire. You rub your eyes and brace yourself. Today's not a work day, at least not officially. According to your neighbor, who has a calendar scratched into his wall with wine stains and tally marks, today is a Dies Nefastus, a religious holiday on which official business is forbidden. Which is great because you're not in the mood to haul bricks on one foot. But here's the twist. In Rome, there are a lot of holidays. We're talking over 150 per year. Historians still argue whether this was a strategy for religious devotion, social cohesion, or just an elaborate excuse to avoid actual labor. You step outside and see the city already gearing up for today's festival. Children run about with reeds and wreaths, trying to look serious about their sacred duties while mostly trying to hit each other with the sticks. A flute player squeals a tune that sounds like a pig learning Latin. You spot your neighbor, Lucilla, burning incense on a tiny rooftop altar. She's murmuring prayers to Juno with a jug of wine in one hand and a bundle of mint in the other. You nod politely. She nods back, eyes slightly wild. Religion here is intense. Down the stairs and into the street, the transformation is in full swing. Today's event? a celebration of Fortuna Virilis, the goddess of strength, luck, and, oddly enough, masculine virtue. You don't ask questions. Vendors are setting up stalls with wreaths, roasted chickpeas, honeyed pastries, and strange animal figurines made of beeswax. There's a man yelling about divine protection while he slaps olive oil on everyone who gets too close. He gestures at you. You decline. A nearby altar is being decorated with flowers, bread, and what might be pigeon feathers. A priest in full regalia, robes, laurel wreath, very serious facial hair, leads a group of celebrants in chant. You listen. It mostly sounds like, "Don't offend the goddess or else." Fair enough. Further down the street, you find a procession forming. Musicians with drums and pipes lead the way, followed by a group of women carrying garlands and a goat wearing a wreath. Yes, the goat is part of the ceremony. No, it doesn't look thrilled. Someone hands you a candle. You're not sure why, but you accept it like a local. When in Rome, right? As you trail the procession, the smell of incense thickens, blending with smoke from street fires and roasted meats. Your stomach growls. Again. You stop by a stall where an old man is selling libum, sweet sacrificial cakes made with cheese, flour, and honey. You buy one, take a bite, and immediately understand why they're an offering to the gods. It's fluffy, rich, and just the right amount of sticky. You could cry. Across the plaza, a group of young men are engaged in a spirited game of Trigon, tossing a ball between three players with a flurry of grunts and dramatic flair. One misses and the ball smacks an elderly priest in the back of the head. Everyone freezes. He turns slowly. They scatter like pigeons. You're still clutching your candle when someone starts shouting near the Temple of Venus. Turns out a sacred chicken has gone rogue. It flaps wildly through the crowd, pursued by two red-faced attendants. People cheer. One man yells, "Auspices are ruined." Another shrugs. Maybe it's a sign. Historians still debate whether Romans actually believed in omens or just loved the drama. You're inclined to believe it was both. The day wears on. The sun climbs higher. Offerings are made. Prayers are chanted. Drums are pounded. You pass a group of teenagers daring each other to jump over the festival fire, a tradition meant to burn away bad luck. One of them falls flat on his face and laughs. Another does it flawlessly, tosses his wreath in the air, and catches it with his mouth. Show off. Later, in the shade of a columned portico, a poet begins reciting verses to Fortuna. His voice is soft, melodic. The crowd grows quiet. He speaks of strength, fate, and the delicate thread of fortune that ties each person to their destiny. You don't understand every word. He's using a lot of fancy poetic Latin, but the mood settles around you like mist. It's nice, peaceful, maybe even holy. And then someone in the back farts, loudly. The spell breaks. The crowd erupts in laughter. The poet sighs. You suppress a giggle. Even gods, it seems, tolerate interruptions. Toward evening, the crowd moves toward the river. Ritual cleansing is next. Part bath, part prayer, part excuse to splash around. You sit on a stone ledge, letting your feet dangle over the water, your candle finally burned to a stub. Nearby, Lucilla wades in, holding her bundle of mint, muttering another prayer. A boy beside her is dunking his sister like she's a laundry rag. The water glitters. The air smells like flowers, wax, and hope. You lean back, watching the stars begin to blink overhead. Rome doesn't sleep, not really, but it does settle. The frenzy of the festival softens into soft voices, quiet songs, and flickering torchlight. You think of Fortuna, about fate, strength, and how little control you really have over anything in this sprawling city of marble and madness. And somehow, that thought is comforting. Because if you can't control it, maybe you can just enjoy it. Even if your ankle still hurts and your candle's melted all over your hand. As the festival winds down and the city slips into its evening rhythm, your stomach gives you a gentle but firm reminder. It's time to eat again, or pass out trying. Now, let's get one thing straight. Dinner in Rome isn't always the grand banquet modern films love to flaunt. Unless you're filthy rich or throwing a party to bribe voters, most Roman dinners are modest affairs. There are no golden goblets, no grapes peeled by hand, and no reclining on silk cushions. You get a wooden stool and a plate that may or may not still smell like last week's lentils. You limp through a narrow street lined with tabernae, the Roman equivalent of takeout joints. The air is thick with smoke, shouting, and the universal aroma of meat on skewers. A baker is hauling a tray of placenta cake, a layered mix of cheese, honey, and dough. It sounds questionable. It smells incredible. But your eyes are locked on something else. A bubbling pot behind a food stall, tended by a squat woman who looks like she hasn't blinked since Claudius was alive. She ladles out a thick stew of beans, barley, and what looks like some kind of root vegetable. Maybe turnip. Maybe mystery. Dupondius, she says without looking up. You drop the coin in her palm, take the bowl, and find a seat on an overturned crate. It's warm, salty, and filling. You suspect it would be better with a splash of wine or a piece of bread, but it's doing the job. Around you, others are enjoying the cheap dinner rush. Sailors, scribes, young lovers, exhausted market vendors, and a small dog that's either someone's pet or a furry con artist. Someone's playing a flute nearby. Badly. You tune it out. Across the street, a wealthier crowd is gathering inside a domus, reclining on couches, laughing at jokes that aren't funny, and getting hand-fed stuffed dormice. Yes, that delicacy. Romans loved them. They'd fatten dormice in special pots, stuff them with herbs and nuts, and serve them as a show of wealth. You shudder. That's a line you're not ready to cross. Try the dormouse? Someone asks with a grin, offering you a bite from a skewer. You look down. It's charred, crispy, with tiny teeth still intact. You smile politely and decline. He laughs and eats it in 2 bites. Brave soul. The conversation around the city is a strange soup of gossip, prayers, and philosophy. One table is discussing whether Nero's poetry is truly misunderstood. Another is loudly arguing over which gladiator is the hottest. You hear a woman yell, "He fought a lion with one hand." Someone else replies, "Yes, and lost half his face." You sip a cup of pasca, a soldier's drink made of vinegar diluted with water. It's sour, strangely refreshing, and probably killing whatever stomach bugs you picked up earlier. You'd prefer wine, but good wine costs money, and your ankle has ruined your budget for the week. Beside you, a man named Publius is explaining his personal theory that cats are sacred messengers of Diana. He's also wearing 2 different sandals and talking to his empty cup. You nod along. We've all been there. At the next stall, a woman is frying moridum, a garlicky cheese paste mashed with herbs. She spreads it on bread and hands it to a young couple giggling at something you didn't hear. The smell wafts toward you. Your stomach, now suspiciously awake again, growls in protest. You grab a second bowl of stew. As the meal settles and the city transitions into its twilight mood, torches are lit and songs begin. A group of children runs by with sparklers made from dried reeds dipped in pitch. One of them nearly sets a tunic on fire. Nobody panics. It's Rome. If nothing's actually burning down, it's a win. You pass a tavern where an amateur bard is singing about Caesar's trip to Gaul, except every third line is just "Veni, vidi, vomui." I came, I saw, I barfed. The crowd is loving it. You slow your pace, feeling the weight of the day settle in your bones. You walk past a stall selling candied nuts, then another with stuffed olives rolled in herbs. You can't afford more food, but the smells follow you like friendly ghosts. Back near your neighborhood, an old man is telling a story to a ring of kids. Something about Medusa and a brave Roman who tried to marry her. The moral seems to be don't date monsters unless you're already dead inside. The kids scream with delight. One runs off pretending to be a gorgon. You finally reach your insula and sit on the bottom step, too tired to climb. The door is closed. You'll go in soon. For now, the warm air, the flickering torchlight, and the hum of the city are enough. A woman walks by, balancing a basket on her hip. She hums something slow and soothing. A man follows with a lute. They're not together, but their rhythms line up just long enough to make the moment feel like a lullaby. Your body aches, your feet are filthy, your tunic smells like 5 different food groups, and your ankle still twinges with every breath. But you've eaten, you're not bleeding, and tomorrow is another maybe holiday. In ancient Rome, that's basically a good day. The sun has dipped below the skyline of domes, arches, and distant hills, casting Rome in a warm amber that quickly fades to gray. But don't expect silence. Rome at night doesn't sleep. It shifts. What was noisy becomes louder. What was chaotic becomes borderline theatrical. And what was dangerous during the day. Let's just say it gets bolder after sunset. You start heading home. Your ankle a pulsing reminder that Roman life is less dolce vita and more suffer quietly and keep walking. You climb the uneven stone steps toward your insula, ready to collapse. But as soon as your hand touches the warped wooden door, a thunder of footsteps behind you sends your heart into your throat. You spin. Just some kids. They're chasing a mangy dog with what looks like someone's discarded sandal in its mouth. The kids scream, the dog bolts. Everyone's thrilled. You are not. You step inside and close the door behind you. The stairwell is dark, no lamps lit. Your upstairs neighbor, apparently convinced that torch smoke offends the household gods, insists on saving oil for special nights. Like what? The second coming of Romulus? You climb carefully. Each stair creaks like it's filing a complaint. Somewhere above, someone's cooking onions. Somewhere below, someone's arguing with their wife about a lost chicken. The insula is alive in the way only desperate, overpopulated tenements can be. Your room greets you with the smell of straw, feet, and dust. You sit heavily on the edge of your sleeping mat, rub your sore ankle, and take a long breath. And that's when the noise really starts. First, the vigils, Rome's night watchmen, clang their bells as they patrol. Meant to deter thieves, fires, and general mayhem, they mostly succeed at making sure you can't fall asleep. One walks past shouting, "All clear on the Vicus Patricius." Someone yells back, "Liar!" Next comes the street musicians. One's playing a reed flute like it owes him money. Another is banging pots and calling it percussion. Their duet sounds like a goose being stepped on. You try to sleep. You really do. But then comes the singing. Drunken singing. From a tavern 2 streets away, you hear a group of revelers belting out a tune about Mars, wine, and someone's cousin who once punched a statue. The lyrics make no sense. The performance is somehow both flat and too sharp, and yet kind of catchy. You roll onto your side, pressing your face into the mat. The sounds continue, a distant argument. Something about stolen figs. A mule braying like it just heard a dirty joke. And a baby crying like it's channeling every deity's disappointment. Oh, and don't forget the fire alarm. Yes, Rome's fire alarm is a guy with a bell. When flames erupt, and they do frequently, especially in wooden, overpopulated insula, the vigils run through the streets ringing like madmen. Tonight, it's just a cooking accident. The fire brigade shows up, assesses the damage, a scorched rug, and one very panicked pigeon, then demands a tip. Someone refuses. A shouting match ensues. You sigh, push yourself up, and limp to the window. Outside, the moon hangs low, casting a silver shimmer over the tiled roofs. The city glows in patches, oil lamps in shrines, torchlight flickering along alleyways, the odd lantern swaying on a market post. You see shadows moving. Some are lovers sneaking off. Others are thieves hoping the gods are too busy with prayers to notice. Down below, a group of teenage boys run past, giggling and throwing dried figs at each other. One yells, "Long live the Republic!" A voice from an upper window shouts, "That's been dead for 50 years!" The boy flips a fig upward in response. You laugh. Quietly, Rome is so alive it refuses to shut up. You close the shutters, lie back down, and focus on the familiar creaks and hums. The wheezing breath of your neighbor through the wall, the gentle scamper of a mouse across the floor, the steady drip-drip from the cracked ceiling into a waiting clay pot. It's oddly soothing. And then, of course, comes the one noise you weren't prepared for. A street preacher. You don't know if he's praising the gods or condemning them. His accent is thick, his passion impressive, and his volume set to, "I'm trying to convert the moon." Eventually, the vigils tell him to quiet down. You drift finally into a fragile, half-conscious doze, until a catfight, actual cats, erupts in the alley. It ends when a clay jug is hurled from a window. You're awake again. You check your candle stub. It's nearly gone. Your mat is itchy, your back is stiff, your ears are ringing, and yet, somehow, you don't hate it. There's a rhythm to the noise. A messy, clanging lullaby. Rome doesn't rest, not really, but it breathes. And if you listen closely, you start to recognize its heartbeat. Slow, rough, relentless. You roll over. Let the noise wrap around you like a worn blanket. You won't sleep well, you never do. But you're in Rome. And this is just how the night sounds. You wake up with straw in your hair, a sore neck, and the distinct feeling that a raccoon, not native to Rome, but stay with us, punched you in the spine during the night. In truth, it was probably just your mattress folding in on itself again. And maybe the lingering effects of yesterday's mystery stew. But no time to mope. Because today, fate has pulled a cruel card from the bottom of the deck. You've been conscripted. That's right. You, limping, underfed, barely holding your life together, are now a proud member of the Roman military. Or at least you will be after you trudge to the local officium and let some bureaucrat with a bad haircut record your name in the rolls. It started with a scroll hand-delivered yesterday evening by a boy who looked vaguely sorry for you. "Congratulations," it read. "The Empire thanks you for your service. No choice. No warning. Just thanks. So now, here you are, standing in a dusty courtyard with a group of other unfortunate civilians. Some look nervous, some look excited. One man is still drunk. The officer barking at you all is built like a battering ram and has a voice that could chip stone. Form a line! That's not a line. That's a disgrace to geometry. You line up. They hand you a tunic slightly less itchy than your own, a belt that smells like dead cow, because it is, and a pair of sandals called caligae, hobnailed soles designed to last miles and crush toes. You already miss your old, broken pair. Next, weapons. Not a sword yet, don't flatter yourself. First, a wooden practice gladius and a target stuffed with straw and defeat. You'll earn iron when you stop crying during drills, the officer growls. Training begins immediately. First lesson, marching. You thought walking hurt before? Try doing it in formation, under the sun, for hours, with 100 other people who've also never marched a day in their lives. It's less military precision, more drunken conga line. Left! Left! Not your other left, Sylvanus. Someone trips. The officer sighs like the gods have personally betrayed him. Then come the drills. You swing your wooden sword at the dummy, over and over, until your arms are jelly and your blisters have blisters. Every time you stop to gasp for air, the officer hits you with a fresh Latin insult. A sinus mollis, soft donkey. You don't even know what that means, but hurts. After what feels like an eternity, they give you water from a skin that tastes like it's also been used to. Tan leather. You drink it anyway. Hydration is more important than dignity now. Lunch is barely worth mentioning. A scoop of barley mush and a slice of questionable pork. The flavor can only be described as brown. You eat it sitting on a stone, watching the actual soldiers nearby play dice and pretend not to be sunburnt. One of them, Lucius, probably the only one who doesn't look like he'd stab you for blinking wrong, grins. New recruits always think they're going to die. He chews his food like it wronged him. Sometimes they do. Comforting. The rest of the afternoon is devoted to shield drills. Your shield is wood, too big for your arms and smells faintly of vomit. You hold it in front of you, arms trembling, as they yell for coordinated movement. Raise! Block! Advance! Now hold! You hold. You wish you hadn't. By nightfall, your legs are numb, your arms don't respond to basic commands, and you've developed a deep personal hatred for every Roman general who ever thought this was a good idea. And the reward? Sleep. But not at home. Oh no. Tonight, you're sleeping in camp. They march you to a castra, a makeshift military outpost just outside the city wall. It's a cramped grid of tents, fences, and stern discipline. You're shown your tent, shared with 5 other new recruits who snore, talk in their sleep, and one guy who brings a live chicken as a comfort animal. Your sleeping mat is a sack of straw, your pillow is your own arm, and your blanket is optimism. Before lights out, a centurion strolls in for one last motivational speech. Remember, he says, voice like gravel soaked in vinegar. You don't fight for gold. You fight for Rome. You bleed for honor. You march so the empire never falls. A long pause. Then he adds, and if anyone's caught stealing wine again, I'll feed you to your own sandals. Lights out. The tent is hot. The air smells like feet, boiled leather, and anxiety. Somewhere outside, a wolf howls. Or maybe a large dog. You're too tired to care. You try to sleep. Someone coughs, someone snores, the chicken clucks. You whisper to yourself, at least it's not the sponge again. A pause. Then you hear a faint reply from across the tent. Yet. And somehow you drift off anyway, dreaming of marching endlessly, of shouting centurions, of sandals filled with pebbles and pride. You are officially a cog in the most powerful military machine the world has ever known. And your feet already hate it. You wake up before dawn, not because you're well rested, but because someone's blowing a cornu, a giant brass horn curved like a question mark, right outside your tent. It's not a gentle wake-up. It's the sonic equivalent of a brick to the forehead. You sit up groggily, your muscles aching like you've been trampled by an elephant. And in a way, you have. Except the elephant was Roman military training, and it marched over your spirit with caligae. The other recruits stir, groaning in a chorus of regret. The guy with the chicken mutters something about Jupiter and rolls over. Someone else is trying to put on their tunic inside out. You limp outside with the grace of a dropped sack of lentils. Outside the sky is still dark, but Rome is already glowing in the distance. Lanterns flicker, smoke curls from early cooking fires, and somewhere a rooster crows, defiantly as if daring the world to challenge his authority. You don't get long to admire the view, though, because it's time for more marching. Today's task, a forced training hike, 30 miles in full kit. You blink. 30? You whisper. The centurion nods. 30, with gear. Without complaining. Too late. They throw a pack on your back, about 60 pounds of equipment. Helmet, shield, sword, stakes for setting up camp, a pan for cooking, and something that might be a spare tunic or just a really confused towel. And then you march. You march through fields, over hills, down roads paved so badly your knees vibrate like a lyre string. You march past farms, shrines, and confused goats. You march while the sun rises and your ankles scream obscenities. You march until you forget your name and become one with the dust. At one point, a bee flies into your helmet. You don't stop. At another, someone's sandal breaks. The centurion gives them a look that says, die tired or die shamed. They limp onward. By midday, your tunic is soaked in sweat, your calves are whispering threats, and your brain is quietly leaving the chat. You look to your left and see a fellow recruit weeping silently. To your right, someone is humming a funeral dirge under their breath. You're handed a strip of dried meat and a flask of sour wine. It tastes like leather soaked in vinegar. You chew slowly, watching a line of ants crawl over your sandal. You envy their coordination. Eventually, finally, you return to camp, 30 miles down. Probably fewer than 30 coherent thoughts left in your head. You collapse onto your straw mat like it owes you money, but you can't rest long. The centurion walks in and announces that tomorrow you'll be learning formations. You don't even groan. You just lie there blinking, soul cracked wide open. Later that evening, you're granted a moment of peace. You wander toward a nearby stream to wash off some of the sweat, dirt, and existential despair. The water's cold and refreshing. For the first time in days, your feet don't feel like they're plotting revenge. You sit on a boulder, letting the sun dry your skin, when a fellow recruit, a woman named Julia, with the posture of someone who's absolutely over it, sits beside you. "Thought I was going to be a scribe," she says. "Turns out I can hold a shield, so here I am." You nod. "Same, except I thought I was going to be a baker." She looks at you. "Can you bake?" "Not at all," she snorts. "You'll fit in great." You chat for a while about sore muscles, terrible stew, and the philosophical possibility that you died weeks ago and this is just Roman purgatory. She offers you a bit of candied fig she smuggled in. You accept like it's a holy relic. It's sticky, sweet, and the best thing you've tasted in months. As night falls, the camp settles into a quiet hum. Crackling fires, quiet laughter, the low clink of armor being repaired. You see a soldier carefully oiling his sword, humming a lullaby. Another is braiding his horse's mane. Everyone has their own way of surviving. Inside the tent, someone's telling a ghost story about a legion lost in the German forest. "They say the trees whisper in Latin," he says, "but upside down." Someone else responds by snoring loudly. You lie on your mat, arms behind your head, looking at the tent ceiling and wondering if there's an easier life somewhere. One without endless marching, one with proper shoes. But then you remember something the centurion said earlier, right before he yelled at a guy for sneezing during formation. Rome doesn't need heroes, it needs survivors. You smirk. You can do that. Kind of, probably. Tomorrow you'll learn the famous testudo, the tortoise formation. Shields up, march in sync, trust your neighbor. You're not sure whether you'll master it or just fall on your face again, but hey, either way, it's another story. And somehow, despite the sore shoulders, blistered heels, and lingering smell of burnt lentils, you feel something close to pride. You're not a gladiator, not a senator, not some toga-wearing philosopher. You're a foot soldier in a massive, grinding empire, and right now, that's enough. Let's be honest, friend. Being a man in ancient Rome is no spa day. But being a woman? That's a whole different arena. No armor, no sword, no vote, no voice. And definitely no rest. So today, we switch sandals. Imagine waking up not in a barracks or insula, but in the corner of a cramped bedroom, beneath a low ceiling smeared with smoke, next to your mother, 3 siblings, and an angry goose. You are a Roman woman. And from the moment your eyes open, society already has plans for you. First priority, your face. Before your feet even touch the floor, you're already thinking about how to look presentable. Because in Rome, appearances aren't just vanity, they're currency. If your hair isn't braided with care, if your cheeks aren't rosy enough, if your dress isn't clean, well, good luck finding a husband or avoiding gossip sharper than a barber's razor. You reach for your cosmetic kit. Inside, crushed lead for whitening, red ochre for blush, soot for eyeliner, and a perfume that smells like someone set a flower on fire and bottled the aftermath. It burns a little. That's probably fine. You slip into a stola, the traditional gown for a Roman matron. It's heavy, layered, and determined to get caught on every table edge. Over it goes the palla, a shawl you'll spend half the day adjusting while walking like your spine was replaced with a stick. Breakfast? If you're lucky, you'll get some bread and olives. If you're less lucky, you're already grinding grain, stirring lentils, or chasing chickens that absolutely do not want to be stewed today. And if you think staying home means safety, think again. You're managing the household, which is a nice way of saying you're a CEO with no salary, no sleep, and a staff of unruly relatives. The water needs fetching. The laundry needs scrubbing. The neighbor's baby needs minding because, of course, she just popped out for a ritual. And don't forget spinning, always with the spinning. Your hands twist wool into thread, hour after hour. It's tedious, it's essential. It's the Roman woman's badge of honor. A woman who doesn't spin is a woman not fulfilling her purpose, apparently. You sigh and keep twisting. A friend drops by, Livia, who married into a slightly better insula 2 blocks over. She's carrying news like a cartload of figs, who got married, who got dumped, who was spotted in the forum without her pala. Scandalous. The conversation turns, as it always does, to marriage. Because if you're not married by your early teens, you're late. And if you are married, you're already under the command of your husband's manus, the legal hand of ownership. He can divorce you by simply stating he wants to. You can't even keep the dowry unless you're lucky or incredibly clever. Historians still argue whether Roman women wielded real power behind closed doors or were simply masters of survival in a rigged game. You're beginning to think it's both. At midday, your husband returns. He smells like wine and arrogance. He rants about grain prices, complains that the cook burned the stew, then falls asleep in the atrium while snoring like a wheezing gladiator. Romance. You'd like to visit the bathhouse, but as a woman, your time slot is restricted. You go mid-afternoon, crammed between lunch and the respectable hours reserved for men. Inside the balcony, it's hot, humid, and packed with chattering women. Some gossip, some scrub, some gossip, some scrub, some stare blankly at the wall as if imagining a world without chores. You bathe quickly. The water isn't exactly clean. The attendants rush you. You try to enjoy the brief moment of warmth, of peace, of not being needed. But even here you hear someone say, "Did you see Flavia's ankles?" So pale. So tragic. After bathing, you swing by the marketplace. You haggle for lentils, avoid the fish stall, it sings with flies, and whisper a prayer to Mercury not to get pickpocketed. You succeed. Back home, you tend to your daughter's knotty hair. She's squirming. She's grumpy. She tells you she wants to be a priestess. You smile and nod. Maybe she'll make it, maybe not. You thread gold into her braid anyway. Then it's time for cena, dinner. You prepare the food. You serve the food. You clean up the food. You do not eat first. That's for the men, even if they contributed nothing beyond passive chewing and wine-fueled debate about the superiority of their grandfather's figs. When you do eat, it's cold. And when everyone's finally quiet, and the lamp is lit low and the goose is asleep, thank Jupiter, you take a breath. You light a small oil lamp to Vesta, goddess of the hearth. You whisper a thank you. Not because today was kind, but because it ended. Then comes the knock at the door. It's your neighbor. Wide-eyed? Her sister's gone into labor. No midwife nearby. Can you help? Of course you can. You grab the towels, the herbs, the wine. You roll up your sleeves. You go. And you do what Roman women have always done. Everything. The morning is loud. Not the usual Rome loud either. Not goats and merchants and babies screaming over bread crusts. No, today's noise has a different tone. Lower, rowdier, sharper at the edges. You poke your head out of your insula window and instantly regret it. The streets are packed with people, shoulder to sweaty shoulder, all moving in one direction, toward the Colosseum. A gladiator day. Of course it is. You limp downstairs, careful on the crooked steps, still feeling the ache of soldier drills and the lingering sting of yesterday's frying oil that kissed your thumb while cooking lentils. You weren't planning on going to the Colosseum, but there's something about the way the crowd flows. It pulls you like a tide. Along the way, you pass stalls already cashing in on the event. roasted chestnuts, cheap wine in ceramic cups, souvenir figurines of famous gladiators carved from river clay. One stall is selling tunics dyed red, just like the ones the real fighters wear. The dye is already rubbing off onto people's hands. You join the stream of bodies as it pours into the great arena, Rome's beating, brutal heart. The Flavian amphitheater, towering and beautiful and terrifying all at once, dominates the skyline. It's a marvel of engineering, and also a slaughterhouse. You shuffle up the stairs, find a stone seat somewhere between nosebleed and don't look down. The air buzzes with excitement, cheers, drums, gossip, the occasional chant of someone's name. You can smell the metal tang of blood even before the fighting starts. And then the gates open. The crowd roars. 2 men emerge, bare-chested, armored arms, leather skirts, and expressions carved out of stone. One carries a trident, the other a short sword and a shield no bigger than a dinner plate. Their eyes don't blink. Their muscles ripple like they've never heard of a rest day. They bow to the emperor. Ave Imperator morituri te salutant. Hail, Emperor. We who are about to die salute you. Then they begin. You want to look away. You really do. But Rome doesn't look away. Every clash of blade, every grunt, every drop of blood earns gasps and applause. Vendors toss nuts. Someone spills wine. A child on his father's lap screams with glee. The fight ends quickly, too quickly. The man with the trident stumbles, slips, and the short sword finds its way home. The crowd holds its breath. The victor looks up at the emperor's box. The emperor gives a thumbs down, or maybe sideways. Historians still argue what the gesture really meant. Either way, it's over. A team of attendants drags the body off like it's just another piece of meat. The next round begins. Beast this time. A lion, huge and golden, released into the arena. The crowd loses its mind. The opponent is a man with a net and a spear who looks like he made one too many bad life choices. It's ugly. You wince. You're not the only one. A woman beside you mutters a prayer to Diana. A man nearby takes another bite of cheese. You wonder suddenly if this is what Rome wants to be remembered for. Not aqueducts, not poetry, not laws or language or lunar calendars, but violence, spectacle, bread, and circuses. The crowd chants. The next bout begins. This one involves 2 female fighters, rare but not unheard of. The novelty draws shouts and bets. One is tall and fierce, wielding a curved blade. The other is quicker, agile, eyes, darting. They're skilled, very skilled. You find yourself impressed, even moved, until one of them slips and the moment turns again. The crowd's cheers rise. You feel your stomach drop. Rome is not kind. Hours pass. The sun arcs high. The seats grow hotter. The fights blur together. Blood, dust, the clash of steel, the scream of the unlucky. You leave before the grand finale. As you walk away, you see a small girl outside the Colosseum steps, clutching a carved wooden sword and swiping at her brother. She laughs. He blocks with a stick. Their mother watches, tired but smiling. Life goes on. You pass a fountain and wash your hands. The water is cold, clear. You stare into it for a moment, your face swimming back at you. Dusty, tired, alive. You wonder, if you died today, would your name be remembered? Would someone scratch it on a wall? Say it in a prayer? Probably not. But then again, most Romans weren't heroes. They were just like you. And maybe that's the point. As the sun sets, Rome softens again. Market stalls fold. The heat fades. The city exhales. You walk home through golden light, past couples whispering, children playing, a dog curled by a statue of Jupiter. You limp a little. You wince as you climb the stairs. And then you lie down. You've made it through another Roman day. And if you're being honest, you're not sure you'd survive another one. The city quiets, at last. You lie on your straw-filled mat, eyes half closed, listening to the sounds of Rome fade into something gentler. The clatter softens into murmur. The footsteps grow distant. Even the tavern across the alley, once full of shouting and clinking cups, has gone still. Just a single lute plucks a lullaby through the window slats. The air is cooler now. It brushes your skin like the edge of a curtain. You shift slightly, feeling the dull ache in your legs, the faint sting of sun-kissed arms, the hum of exhaustion in your bones. But it's not all pain. There's a strange comfort in it, the kind that comes from having